Welcome, Sam, Highdee, and Justin. Three very talented and creative minds in one room, from fashion design to creating comedy skits to acting and filmmaking in your spare time. For us to know you a little bit better, could you maybe tell us about, if you still remember it, that first spark to create, where that came from?
Ooh. I think for me, it was sometime around third grade when I was in primary school in Hong Kong. I think we had the opportunity to, for English class, pick between like doing a play, like a short 5-minute play, or writing a poem or writing a short story. And I think immediately I picked play for some reason. I didn't really know what it was. And it was very simple script, it's very simple characters, but I just remembered feeling really creatively fulfilled as like an 8-year-old or something. It was really young.
Yeah.
It was really young, but I think that was the first spark of excitement and inspiration to create. That I guess was the start of this journey that I've been on today.
Nice. For me, I think I went to the doctor when I was very young, and they told me that I was walking with my toes inward. And they said, well, ballet might be nice for you. So I took my first ballet class, I think, when I was 9. And then I completely fell in love with ballet and, you know, being on stage. And then I went ahead and I thought I want to do this as a professional career. So I went to the conservatory in The Hague to study classical ballet. And that's where that spark of being on stage and telling stories and really being surrounded with like really like-minded people, you know. You're in a building with people that are getting their PhD in choreography or they're jazz pianists, and it was just that atmosphere of being surrounded by creativity like all day that really made me think that's what I want to be surrounded with forever.
There's so much work that goes into ballet too, because my sister took ballet growing up.
It's really, I think, like physically demanding, but also mentally.
Incredibly,
And the discipline is really like
it's very intense.
drilled into you when you're young. So yeah.
Absolutely, I see that. I would say for me, it was making my own home movies and like YouTube videos in high school. I have like distinct memories of like skipping algebra class, like calculus class, to go and just like shoot my own videos. And I was really inspired by like, of all things, do you guys remember The Lonely Island?
Yes.
They're amazing though.
Yeah, they're incredible.
They're brilliant.
Yeah, and I think like I was just really inspired by that kind of movement, that wave of just these guys who are really fish out of waters if you look at what they were doing at the time and making an entire career out of it. And so I started to just kind of shoot my own kind of comedy videos and stuff, and then that kind of led me to wanting to learn more about filmmaking and learn more about acting. And once I started to dabble in filmmaking and acting, I was completely hooked. And so that's when I, started to look into college theater at the time. I think I was in college and taking acting more seriously. And one thing led to the next, and here we all are, I guess.
That makes so much sense.
Yeah.
And Highdee, you've mentioned in a previous interview how you felt quite isolated growing up in the Netherlands, and how you felt that staying here might have held you back into becoming an actress. Could you tell us a bit about that thought process of yours?
I think if we're talking in terms of representation and in really seeing yourself on screen, again, in Holland back when I grew up, I didn't really see that as a possibility. And also where I grew up, Waddinxveen, it was a very small town. So I wouldn't say hold me back, but I just didn't find it in myself to dream big enough in the context of where I was, if that makes sense.
No, it does.
Yeah, we were counting back to the year that you've left, and I think the main representation that you had was Oeshi.
Oeshi and Van Dijk?
Yeah. And that was a Dutch woman dressed up as a Japanese woman.
It's a Japanese woman.
It's not that long
and
ago.
she was making fun of like...
Yeah, she would act quirky, and then celebrities didn't know what to do with her, and obviously it was gonna be normal for this Japanese woman to act so quirky.
I think the times have changed, right, here as well? Yeah, so, wow, I forgot about that. That's crazy.
Sam and Justin, you both grew up spending both times in the United States and Hong Kong, and China, and Taipei. Was there a moment when you realized that the representation in media was different in China and Asia compared to Western media, and how did that affect you?
So I actually grew up mainly in Asia. I grew up in Hong Kong and Taipei, and it was interesting growing up there because my Mandarin or Cantonese wasn't as strong as my English, so I was always seen as a little bit different, even though I looked similar to most of the people I was growing up with, and I got along just fine. But part of me always felt like, oh, you know, my upbringing is still a little bit different from a majority of the people here. But fortunately, we looked similar, so I never felt out of place in that sense. Yeah. And so I think by the time I moved to the US when I was 18, when I went to acting school, I was one of 2 Asian people that started there, and then by the end I was the only Asian person in my class of 30 that finished with 22. I think I was lucky in that I didn't grow up feeling out of place, and I didn't grow up feeling like a minority, which I know some people that grew up in the US have felt. And it gave me a sense of comfort because I knew that even if I was the only representation of Asian people in my class, I knew that there were many, many other parts of the world where I could just slot right in and be part of the whole. So I think that gave me a sense of peace in a way, and I know that I acknowledge that that's very different, and it's not the same as growing up in the States, but that was part of what shaped my perspective and who I am as a person.
Do you think it also may have affected where you see yourself and where you could go in your career?
Yes.
Because I think you've mentioned Mark Ruffalo, that if he can get denied 800 times, you can get denied 800 times. And I can imagine that feeling of being more confident when you've seen yourself in different kind of roles, and that you also feel more entitled to it. Like, no, I know these roles are out there. I'm gonna get them.
I don't know if I would use the word entitled, because I think I don't take anything in my career for granted. Like, none of the things I've done. I don't take this for granted. I don't take the response to our show for granted. But I would say it did give me a sense of confidence, weirdly, knowing that if I don't fit in one place and I don't fit in another place, I struggle with that for a little bit, but now as I've gotten older and I've found my people, I know where I belong. I belong where I choose to belong. I belong fully in the US, I belong fully in Asia, because I know where my people are in terms of my close friends, my mentors, the people that inspire me. So in terms of my background affecting where I hope my career goes, I still aim to work as much as I can, but it does make me think a little bit about what I want to do later in life, which includes moving back to wherever my parents are to take care of them. That's not something they asked for, that's not something they've wanted me to do, but it's just something that's part of my upbringing, and it's very important to me that I follow that instinct.
Sam, how was that for you?
Yeah, I think that's where all of my delusions came from, is growing up in both countries. Because, you know, the funny thing about here in America, there in America, you know, and in the West, is that you don't have a lot of people looking like you on TV at the time. But I grew up in Hong Kong, spent time in China, and so when you put on TV, everybody looks like you. So I think that from birth gave me the delusions that I can do this, because it was so normalized for me growing up. But sometimes I do think, man, if I grew up in the United States and I was like, my entire existence was in the US, if that would change how I thought.
For sure. Well, when did you move to the US?
Young, very young. Like I would say maybe 6 or 7 years old. But then I moved back to Hong Kong, China, spent a portion of my time there, and then went back to the US. So I kind of bounced around.
Oh, okay.
But I think that really gave me the confidence and the insight to sort of feel like I could do this. And I think it's interesting.
Belief.
To think about.
It was the belief, not
The delusions. Nah, Delulu. Stay Delulu.
Delulu.
And I was wondering, when you first got the script, were you aware of that it was run by and produced by so many Asian people in the industry, or was it more of the characters that you went for?
No, we knew that Byron Wu was involved. We knew that Kevin Tancharoen was involved. We didn't know about the writers' room, or I didn't know about the writers' room.
No.
Knew that Jenny Ju was involved, our casting director.
There were good people involved.
Yeah.
Very good people. And I
But
think
we didn't know the scope of it, the whole scope of it.
yeah, but also like just from reading the pilot, the level of specificity and attention to detail, like I knew in my heart like only an Asian person could have written this. Like it just felt so familiar that I was like, he has to be probably Asian.
Yeah. It was kind of the opposite. I actually feel like because we didn't have a lot of material, because a lot of stuff was kind of like kept away from us.
Secret, yeah.
It was very secretive.
Yeah.
All we knew were the people involved. So it really was a feeling of, wow, we're going to be taken care of and we're in good hands.
Yeah.
And especially when, obviously Michelle Yeoh came on. It was like, great.
Yeah.
Brad's an
Let's
honorary.
rock and roll.
Brad's an honorary Asian now. So.
Honorary, yeah.
Yes.
And Byron Wu, one of the creators of the show, mentioned that how they wanted to make everybody feel as comfortable with the material, and how to circumvent stereotypes, how they would want you to speak up if something wouldn't feel right. Was that an active conversation, or was that
Absolutely,
more implied?
yes. I mean, it was a very collaborative environment, and I want to give all the credit to Byron and Brad because they made that very clear from the start that it was going to be collaborative, and I think they gave us a lot of room to really make our own choices and come together with our own choices.
Yeah.
At least that was my experience.
Yeah,
for sure.
100%.
And could you talk a little bit about what drew you to your character, and what kind of influence you had on deepening that character and adding to it?
What drew me to the character when I initially read it was, all I got was a character breakdown in the pilot. And I remember reading it, and I was like, this guy's dope. Like, this Charles guy's, man. Like, I wish I was that cool.
You weren't that cool. What are you talking about?
Well, I don't know. I mean, no, but that's the thing though. Like, I remember thinking, like, I wish I was that cool. Like, I've always dreamed of playing a character like that. Some of my favorite actors are people like Tom Hardy and Christian Bale and Cillian Murphy. And I felt the essence of those actors when I read this role. But more important than just the cool factor, I think the more I read the sides, my audition scene was the reunion scene with Michelle's character. I could sense that in the lines, even though all I had to go on were the pilot and side pages, that this character had a much deeper, there's a deeper, I guess, brokenness to him that I found really interesting, because it made him multidimensional, and it gave me a lot of room to explore as an actor and in terms of my imagination and research. And I'm very close with my own family. I have 3 younger siblings, close to my parents.
You got your mom on the show as well?
My mom's on the show as well, yes. She killed it. But in terms of deepening that character, Kevin and I had a conversation, our director, Kevin Tancharoen, we had a conversation very early on where we talked about the inspirations that we had for the story and the character, and how we felt that Charles's arc was going to go over the season. And I think the process really began during that first audition self-tape. That's really the first section of developing this character. But over time, I think we deepened it by both, for me, it was creating memories of the character's background, referencing my own personal experiences, and getting to know my castmates. Highdee and I had a conversation very early on that I think was tremendously helpful for our relationship, where we talked about our characters' histories together. We talked about the places that young Charles and young Alexis went to in Taipei to bond, how our relationship progressed, the feelings that we had for each other's characters as those younger characters. And so when it came time to step on set, like the first time I see her in episode 2, I remember all those memories. Like the Tianmu. I think one of the places was a Tianmu baseball stadium or something. And those are places that I grew up going to as well. So conversations like that, like I think Sam and I probably had many conversations like that at some point. So that's those are some of the ways that we deepened the character.
Yeah, I mean, for me, when I first was introduced to Alexis, it was very much so that she was occupying this role in her job. Like her professional life was very highlighted in a way that she's very capable and she's very intelligent and ambitious. But so I did a lot of research on that, like what does her day-to-day job as an assistant district attorney look like? I spoke to people who actually hold this job, and you really get to see how, you know, seeing maybe the worst of humanity affects a human psyche. But on the other hand, I wanted to make sure that her personal life was also fleshed out in a way that supported the narrative of her job being so important to her. And I always like to ask the question, you know, is this character motivated by fear, or is she motivated by love? And I think I started the beginning of the season with one answer, and then at the end of the season, the arc went to the other, and I just thought, oh my God, I didn't even know that that happened. And then the questions that I was asking Alexis, I had never even asked myself as Highdee. And that was also just like a crazy moment of a reckoning of like character, me, an amalgamation of both. So it was a process that really highlighted a lot about me and about the character, and it was really special.
So which one was it?
I think Alexis starts off with love and ends up with fear. That's what was in my mind.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think when I first read about Bruce and I was reading up on just like the material, who Bruce was, I saw a lot of similarities with Bruce in my own life. Mainly the circumstances that he was in. I felt like I really related to the circumstances that he starts off with. You know, being raised by a single mom in the 626 in San Gabriel Valley of Los Angeles. That was verbatim like what my upbringing was. And so I can really understand Bruce from the perspective of having so much respect for his mom and for making the decisions that he does to side with his family. And because I actually didn't grow up with a dad, you know, some of the choices he makes without seeing his side of, you know, his brother, his estranged brother, as well as his estranged father, they're strangers in his life. And so, you know, when it came to certain decisions about the dad, I felt like it was very easy for me to understand, hey, this guy's a stranger and he's evil in the life, right? So it's very easy for me to connect to that.
Yeah.
When it comes to different choices and stuff, I definitely feel like I had to play up the imagination of being thrown into the triad world. Definitely doesn't happen to...
You don't have experience with that?
No, I should have done more research before and adopt into a triad family or something.
It's not too late.
That would have been smart. So yeah, a lot of that was up for imagination, but also just the material, you know. A lot of that was there, so yeah.
And I can imagine you guys are getting sick of the question, but how was working with Michelle Yeoh, and what was your experience with her, and was it daunting to work with such an icon?
I don't get sick of the question. It's the number one, but I love her, so.
Yeah, working with Michelle was incredible. I mean, it's a dream come true. Like, how lucky are we that we get to work with someone as great as her? She's honestly amazing, and I think who she is as a person doesn't get talked about enough. Or maybe it does. I don't know.
I don't think so.
I don't think so. I think people see her as like Oscar-winning Michelle, but I want people to see her as good freaking person Michelle, because that's who she is to me. Who she is, like, in front of the camera, obviously incredible, but behind the camera was what really stood out to me. How she would talk to our directors, our producers, how she would kind of charm them and just get to know them as people. Like, if you spend 5 minutes in a room with Michelle, it feels like you've known her for 5 years. It's just the way she treats you, listens to you with her heart. So she's amazing. Just an all-around amazing person.
Did you ever have that discussion with her, or that conversation about working in the industry as an actor, and how to navigate representation and stereotyping?
Yeah, I think the advice that she gave me is that I think she said something like it always comes down to having a good story, and that when we're she's like, you don't want to do. I think she said you don't want to give a performance or a story that's just about being Asian, but that story or character has no substance behind it. So that's how she picks her roles. She finds roles that have a compelling story reason or character reason, and by portraying it with excellence and research, that in and of itself represents adequately and thoughtfully and sufficiently. So yeah, that was the thing that I remember she told me. I think it was like halfway through filming.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a really good piece.
Yeah.
That's a
that
really,
makes,
really
like-
it
good
makes
advice.
total sense.
I'm going to have to wrap it up. Thank you so much for sharing your experience with me.
Thank you, Marijke.
Bedankt.
These
Heel
are
erg
great,
bedankt,
great
Marijke.
questions and
Yeah.
no, we can chat. I mean, we can
Yeah.
chat, but I feel
Yeah.
like I got to know them better. So
Aw.
yeah, thank you.
Dankjewel voor het luisteren naar Pan Asian Table Talk. Deze podcast is een productie van Pan Asian Collective. Een collectief van programmamakers, creators en storytellers dat verhalen vanuit Aziatisch-Nederlandse perspectieven maakt en deelt. Caitlin Spaans deed de montage, van Krokant hebben we de muziek en tekst en redactie deed ik, Marijke Phoa. Wil je ook helpen de programma's van PAK mogelijk te maken? Word lid of doneer. Kijk op pak.tv voor meer informatie.